So there's still much to learn from here, folks. I feel like compelled to look at my time here. I'm already going pretty long on this video, but we'll see what we can keep going on. The Vargas, the divisional charts of astrology, are resonant internal astral sphere karmas that undulate within the given points in a birth chart. This might be the last thing I have time to talk about. Like a guitar string's resonance causing other strings to vibrate, the position of planets in certain degrees creates a harmonic resonance chart, which actually has a zodiac of its own. So if you've ever heard of the Navamsha chart, this is what the Vedic people are talking about. Like if you ever watched KRS or any of the classic Vedic guys that are on YouTube, when they talk about the Navamsha chart, this is what they're talking about. So I've given a little way to just kind of explain this, and I'm going to try to do it and give it short thrift. For the Navamsha chart, we split the 30 degrees of a sign into 9 portions. Navamsha relates to 9, okay? So that means that there's going to be 9 chunks of this sign. So there's 30 degrees in a sign. If we divide 30 by 9, we get 3 1/3. That translates to, in astrology terms, 3 degrees and 20 minutes of arc. Remember, a degree is made up of 30 minutes of arc. So a degree is made up of 60 minutes of arc. Just like a clock going around its face, it has 60 seconds before it makes its way around. In the same way, every degree is made up of 60 little portions. So 3 1/3 degrees means 3 and 20 minutes of arc. So for the lay people, let's say every 3 1/3 degrees into a sign, a planet enters a new Navamsha. This is one of those ones where it might be a leap of logic, but just bear with me and we'll see if we can get you to understand, okay? I'm trying to make it pretty clear here. Let's say the sun is at 2 degrees of Aries in a person's birth chart. Okay, this is, by the way, this is my crappy drawing of like the 30 degrees on a sign. Let's say the sun is at 2 degrees of Aries, right here at the 2nd degree of Aries in the birth chart. Now, this resonates, like what I was mentioning is like a guitar. I'm just gonna say this quick. I'm a musician and I always like this metaphor, you know. So if you have 3 guitars in a room, they all have 6 strings, and they're all strung the same way. Now, if I come up and I pluck the A string, let's say it's the 2nd string, if I pluck it on one of the guitars, if you look, the other A strings on the other 2 guitars will go wham. It's like they'll resonate. And this is what we mean by like this harmonic resonance, is that the degree of a planet is resonating in a way that builds another chart. And this is kind of what we're talking about here. It's an internal chart. So when the sun is at 2 degrees of Aries in the birth chart, this puts in the Navamsha of Aries, where it's exalted in the Navamsha chart. So this is a double exalted sun. It's very strong externally in the birth chart, and it's also strong internally in the Navamsha chart. And this is what I mean when we say that the Navamsha, as well as all the Varga charts, are this inner undulating seed essence. What most astrologers say is that the Navamsha is actually the seed of the plant. It is the inner deep potentials of the plant, whereas the Rashi chart is kind of like the soil that it grows in. Now, and they're both important, really, but you can have the perfect soil for any seed, but if it's bad in the Navamsha chart, if it's a bad seed, you're going to grow something bad and it's going to have great support. Great, right? It's actually better to have a planet good in the Navamsha chart, because then it's a potential powerful seed that can make its seed come through even in difficult placements. So you want to have your planet well placed in the Navamsha. Now in this case, both of them are doing well. This is a Navamsha sun that's exalted in Aries, which is exalted in the birth chart, and it's also exalted in the Navamsha. It's a very good thing. Now, let's say that the sun instead is at 5 degrees of Aries in the birth chart. Now it's gone past 3 degrees and a third. It's at 5 degrees, right? So it's exalted in the birth chart, but now it's in the Navamsha of Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And Venus is its enemy, right? We found that in our last thing. When we look at the sun, we look at the sun's enemies. Venus is an enemy. So when the sun is in the Navamsha of Taurus, it's not as powerful inside. So this is a person who is exalted in their immediate life. We have the sun in Aries, and the person can express the form of the sun in Aries. And we all see the sun in Aries and it all looks glorious. But how do they feel about their own sun energy? Probably feels like they are kind of always missing their actual enjoyment of what they're trying to do. They're really trying to enjoy what they're trying to do, which means when the inner sun in Taurus of the Navamsha chart wants to enjoy what it's doing, it goes out into the world. And, let's say that this person finds an opportunity to do a very challenging job, but which would give them high status in life. The inner Taurus is kind of like, I don't know, do I really feel like jumping to that height? I kind of feel like I'm too lazy for it. And it's because there's an inner seed that won't take advantage of the opportunities given in the birth chart, right? Now, let's put the sun at 21 degrees of Aries in the birth chart. Still exalted. But now this sun is in the Navamsha of Libra, where it's debilitated. It doesn't matter what good opportunities this sun creates through the exalted status in the birth chart. Its potentials are significantly wasted on the unconfident, debilitated inner heart. It might not even take any of the opportunities that it has as an exalted sun person. It brings opportunities to it through being exalted, but are you going to do anything with it? Does your sun in its heart and soul, is it at a ripe place where it can feel compelled internally to find opportunities for itself? Probably not. It's probably just going to stick to whatever best thing that it's kind of given and try to make its way into feeling internally like it doesn't have much to give for itself. But within that internal thing, it's got a life of Saturn and Aries that is good for the sun. So you can see how there's a trading that needs to be done. Really, the Navamsha is considered in some way, in most circles in Vedic astrology, the Navamsha chart is considered to be more important and relevant than the birth chart itself. The Navamsha is the most important of all the Vargas. Now, all of the planets have a Navamsha, not just the sun. And yes, even in the Navamsha chart, you can have the sun with Mars in Libra, and that will be considered a yoga of sorts. And all of these planets can interact in the Vargas. Now, don't be discouraged or intimidated by what I'm about to show you, but you pick up on what information is important and what information isn't after you practice this with Vedic astrology, because this is going to look like a lot, okay? The D2 splits the 30 degrees of every sign into 2 portions, 15 degrees each. The Drekana splits the 30 degrees of every sign into 3 portions of 10 degrees each. The Navamsha splits every sign into 9 portions of 3 1/3 each. The Dasamsha splits every sign into 10 portions of 3 degrees each. All of these charts are existing at the same time, overlapping and undulating with the potentials beneath the positions given in the birth chart. And this is, when you look at like this sun at 21 degrees, you look at the birth chart. Now, this is a better example, okay? Let's say the sun is in this example chart. It's in Sagittarius, and it looks like it's like 16 degrees or something like that. So the sun is in Sagittarius in the birth chart. In the Hora chart, since it's past 15 degrees, right? The Hora chart, the D2, splits the signs into 15 degrees each. Since this is past This would actually technically, this is probably at 14 degrees of Sagittarius, which means in the Drekana chart, it's still in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, in the, gosh, me and my words, this is the Drekanas, the D3. So, we see that the sun is where it is, and now the sun is in the sign of Aries in the D3, where we split the 30 degrees of every sign into 10 degrees each. Then in the Navamsha, this sun is in the sign of Cancer. In the Dasamsha, where we split it into 10 portions of 3 degrees each, now the sun is in Aries again. So there's an Aries, and of course the numbers relates to the numerology of the houses. So the D10 relates to your career. This person has the sun in Aries in the D10, which means that they have an exalted, whatever the sun means in this birth chart is going, its energy, just by being what it is, helps the career intrinsically. This person could have a good career despite whatever, or at least they'll feel good about their career, and they'll have good internal opportunities with their career, good creative ideas about it, even though this sun might not be so great in the birth chart. And even the house cusps fall into different Vargas. That's why twins born very close to the same time can still have completely wildly different Varga charts. And there's a lot of them. This is Brihat Parashara lists 16 important Vargas, and many Vedic astrologers use all of these when they do a birth chart. Now, I should say, honestly, most astrologers just stick to the birth chart and the Navamsha chart for the most part. They only use these other 16 for specific concerns.